Welcome back. I'm Toby Dogweiler. We're going to continue in Missouri Caves and Speleology this week with Doug Guzet and our special guest, John Beard. What we want to talk about in this module is the National Speleological Society, or NSS, and caving clubs, and how you can become a part of one if you're interested in finding more opportunities to go caving.
And I think we'll even get into some of the caving gear. You might notice our guest today, John Beard, has kindly actually got all of his gear on, which is pretty nice because usually it's about 60 in the caves here where we live, and we're under the lights today, so it's a little warmer than that.
You don't dress like this all the time?
No.
Well, John, welcome. I know you're not only the past president of the caving club, the local chapter called a grotto that I'm a member of, the Springfield Plateau Grotto, but I know you're also a fellow of the National Speleological Society, and that's a huge honor, well-deserved in your case. So.
Well, I think if you do this long enough, you accomplish something, and so that's probably how that happened. Yeah, I do a lot of time underground, 170 days last year. You have to be prepared for it. You have to basically go through a cave with the idea that you're not going to be the worse for wear, and the cave is not going to be the worse for wear, and the landowner's not going to be angry with you if you do something inappropriate. So I guess I'll start by simply standing up and telling why I've got what I've got. You have to be warm, as Dr. Guzet said. You have about a 60-degree environment, and if it's moist, humid, even colder. So I dress in the winter with a sweatshirt, in the summer just with a shirt or a polypro, but I always have this protective set of coveralls on so that my clothing doesn't get ruined, and if I'm just dirty, I can take the coveralls off and I'm going to be just fine. I have to pad my knees and elbows because we do a lot of crawling, and the floors tend to have a lot of small rocks in them. So knee pads, elbow pads keep my knees and elbows from turning into hamburger. And I wear boots. The boots keep my feet clean. They keep them dry as long as I'm not in too deep of water. And these are rubber boots, which are easy to clean. They're one piece. You don't have to worry about shoelaces and so on. So I'm doing fine there. And so the rubber boots are good, and they're fairly inexpensive. They're not $130 like a lot of shoes are. These cost me about 35 bucks. So with that, I have gloves, because gloves keep your hands clean. They keep them from getting too many scrapes and so on. So they're good. They also keep your equipment clean, because if you handle cameras or other gear, your muddy hands will get them muddy. So you take off your gloves to handle your equipment. So that's the basics. Of course, I have a helmet. A helmet does three things. It keeps your hair clean, it keeps you from banging your head on rocks, and it's a great place to keep your light. Keeps your hands free to do whatever. Not one light, but three sources of light. So if you dig into my pack, you'll find all manner of equipment in here. First of all, never get too thirsty, so there's water. Snack food that can make its way through the cave. You have extra batteries. Extra batteries because these batteries won't last forever. And what happens if my main light source fails? I have two other light sources, three sources of light, extra batteries, food, and water. So that's a good part of what keeps me safe in caves. So,
and I'm going to jump in on that, John. I know from things we've done that there's a lot of places, we call them here in the Ozarks headbangers, so there are a lot of shorter caves or caves that you're walking along and there's a ledge of rock that is much lower and it's easy to bump your head. But I also noticed, and you hit it well, your battery's in a waterproof jug, and in fact, so are your other headlamps. That the lamps you use are waterproof.
yes.
And I know also with our cave grotto, I would say I know we have some caves where you do crawl in water, and you don't wear these coveralls, you wear a wetsuit with
Yeah.
that to make sure that you're going to manage the thermal temperatures well.
I have two types of wetsuits. I have a shorty that keeps me a little bit warmer. I can afford to go into brief immersion,
Yeah.
but I also have a heavy-duty full wetsuit for that water crawl you can't get out of
Yeah.
any too quick.
And it's always important to go with someone who knows if you're going anywhere in water, because you would want to know that you're going to be able to get through that water and not be the first one exploring that, or have a good team ready to
Yeah.
explore that.
We discuss in advance any particular unusual features that we may find in the cave. For instance, if it is a wetsuit cave, we make sure that everybody understands you have to have a wetsuit. We also do vertical caves. I didn't bring any vertical equipment today,
point.
but we have ropes, we have ascenders, we have harnesses, we have the whole manner of vertical equipment. And again, if we're dropping a pit, then obviously you not only need to have all of the right equipment, but also the training
Yes,
how to
indeed.
use it.
Good, because I know from a fact I take classes in, and sometimes it's a little slippery in there, and people, even on a cave that I know doesn't have a big vertical drop, there can be a couple feet where you could slide off on a ledge of mud and twist an ankle or something, and it's
sure.
amazing how much effort goes into rescuing someone who can't walk their or crawl their own way back out of a cave, isn't it?
Sure. You'll notice that these are high boots.
Yes.
Okay, so it does give you some ankle protection, and also the bottom of the boot isn't smooth.
Yeah,
It has
good.
lug soles. These are half worn already.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't want to slip.
That's fantastic.
So
Now, I am going to say, we've been here talking about caves of the Ozarks, and I know you've caved all over the country, but especially here in the Ozarks. You mentioned it's about 60 in many of our caves here, but I think often that's sort of tied to the average annual surface temperature where we live. For example, I was down in a cave in Texas not too long ago that was closer to 90 in temperature. And so as some of our students might be looking from other places in the world, they should realize that the cave where they live may be colder or warmer based on really the climate of where they live. But
There-
they should always dress accordingly.
yeah, there are caves in the United States that are below freezing.
Yeah.
Even though the surface temperature in July might be 90,
Yeah.
the temperature inside is below 30. So you have to dress for the occasion. And as with Texas, some caves are just darn right hot and humid. It's like a sauna.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask about what's in your breast pockets here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well,
I
I'll
noticed
take
some
off.
things.
I'll take off my gloves for that because that's
Yeah.
what you're supposed to do in a cave before you handle your equipment. I survey a lot of caves. I map a lot of caves, and we have open reel fiberglass tapes. We have distometers, such as this one, which measures the distance with a laser pointer. And I also have, this goes with me every trip. This is a little notebook. It's on Write in the Rain paper, so it can get wet if need be. And I write whatever I find. Biology, if I notice bats, salamanders, and so on, I write it down. If I'm going to a cave that has never been described before, then I'll write down a description because I'm not going to remember it all up there. So I write that. Now, if I really am involved in a cave survey, I'll bring out some of my equipment. This is a compass inclinometer, which measures the compass direction, the azimuth, as well as the up and down vertical angle, which is necessary in mapping. And of course, if you want to record the location of a cave so that you can find it later, then we have a GPS unit. So
entrance.
I carry all of this with me standard wherever I go.
It might be worth mentioning, how does the GPS work inside the cave?
It does not.
That's a great thing to mention.
Once you're inside, all bets are off on the GPS.
The compass will work.
The compass will work.
But the magnetic compass, not a GPS compass.
Yeah,
And so-
yeah. GPS has, until we invent something that can go through solid rock, we're not going to get a signal.
I think it's worth mentioning to potentially novice cavers because I work a lot in streams on the surface too, and even under leaf canopy, GPS doesn't work, let alone inside where you have tens of hundreds of feet of rock over your head.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
And I'm going to jump in for one more thing. You mentioned your field book there. I know I'm a geologist, Toby's a geologist. We use field books that are waterproof paper and waterproof either pencil or waterproof ink. And so we do use these a lot ourselves. I think, again, for potential novice cavers out there, if someone's exploring a cave, first they should probably talk about going with a local grotto or club that we'll talk about in our next segment. But just as importantly, I think you said it, there's lots of caves I've been in that I thought, oh, the passage branches here are forks left and right, and I'll remember which one I was on. But then an hour later, after I've been in there and almost twisted my ankle and saw some really beautiful things, I forgot what I was at. And so it's always important to have that little, every time I make a passage branch, I might want to make a note if I don't have a good map of that cave or don't know my way through it very well.
Yeah, some caves are very simple. They're a single passage, and then we have caves like Cameron Cave in the Hannibal, Missouri area that are 4.5 miles of absolute maze. And if you don't make a mental note or
Paper
carry
notes.
paper notes with you, getting lost is going to be a very easy thing to do.
Yeah, when I first started caving, one of the best pieces of advice I got was to look back a lot, because the cave looks different in that direction than it does in this direction.
Exactly.
And so you recognize some things on the way out
Yeah,
from that perspective.
Yeah.
yeah, very important.
And those maze caves can be, there's two famous U.S. national parks, Wind Cave and Jewel Cave, that are what's called a maze cave. And even within just 1 square mile of land, they have hundreds of miles of passage. And so it's very easy to get in one that's parallel to one that you were in and think that you're in, it's like a maze.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a city street map
Yeah.
in plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question I wanted to ask you about and maybe talk about for the students in the class is the evolution that somebody like yourself goes through. First, let's back up. What's your background? What's your training?
My training.
Yeah.
What I did for a living
Yeah.
was I was a training designer at the 3M, local 3M plant. And so I taught people how to do their jobs, basically.
So you didn't start out with a background in geology or biology or speleology?
Yeah.
Is
No,
this-
caves initially were something different to photograph. My big hobby was photography at the time. So it was something different to photograph because you have to supply the light as opposed to photographing a tree outside where the sun is your light. And so it's a whole new discipline on how to take good photographs in a cave. And as I got involved in caving clubs, then I learned how to do a lot of other things.
And so I think what we see in a lot of people, they start out caving recreationally, maybe to do some photography or just to explore, and they evolve more to what we often call a project caver, which I think is a good description of a lot of the 170 days you spend underground, I
Yeah.
think, a year.
I'm either restoring vandalized caves, mapping, monitoring biology, or managing a couple of caves.
Yeah, and I would add to that you do a lot of education, both to help our students and
Yeah.
some of Doug's
you do
classes
great
and,
education.
and others.
Yeah, I take scout groups and school groups through a local cave and teach them about caves and correct caving techniques.
Yeah. One that our club manages, actually,
Yeah.
for that.
Yep. Sure enough.
I think we probably ought to wrap this segment up just for the length of the video that people download. But you're going to stay with us, and we'll come back in another segment and talk some more, won't we?
Okay,
Great.
sounds good.